Hey friends, welcome back to Rita Talks. I'm Rita, and on this YouTube channel, I just share some of the thoughts, ideas that I've been thinking about, some of the things that have been going on in my life. And in today's video, I want to talk about one podcast episode that honestly I learned so much from, and I probably listened to it this week about 5 times. But yeah, without further ado, the podcast episode is an episode that was on Mo Gawdat's podcast, so Slow Mo, and it was episode number 285 with Stephen Kotler. And basically, uh, if you don't know Stephen Kotler, he's an 11-time bestseller. And basically, this episode's topic was basically the idea of flow, how to get into flow, and all sorts of things with regards to this. And basically, the reason that I listened to it so many times is that basically it's quite dense. Maybe it's not that it's quite dense, it's just that I've never heard the ideas that were talked about before, like that were talked about in this podcast before. And so I really needed to digest it. But also, basically, the first time that I listened to it, I was not really in a mood to take any notes. And the same for almost all of the other 4 times, except the last one where I just took all of the notes that I wanted to take. But basically, the next 3 times I listened to it was during the past 3 days. So, as you know, the past 3 days have been quite hard for me, given like this news that I'm changing teams, etc. And so basically, I like whenever I go to the gym and I do my rowing session, I listen to a podcast, and basically I just kept re-listening to the same podcast that I was listening to because I just wanted to for the ideas to sink in, but also, to be honest, half of the time, especially on the first day, the first 2 days, I was only half listening. Uh, I was thinking too much about this change of teams that I'm going through actually, and yeah, I couldn't get myself to focus, or like I didn't feel like taking notes. So basically, I just decided that I wouldn't re-listen to this podcast episode until I felt like taking notes. And basically, that was a bit of yesterday and mostly today. So I just took really, really extensive notes. Like if you look at my notes like this, these are the notes that I took today just from this episode. And yeah, it's such a cool episode that I think is really worth listening to. Actually, like, given that I've never read any of Stephen Kotler's work, like listening to this podcast episode made me want to read some of his books. So I started reading Still in Fire, and basically it's a book about group flow. And yeah, it's been quite an interesting book, and yeah, it's just this podcast has completely, I don't know, like it has given me so many aha moments that I just felt that if I was not taking notes on this, I felt quite bad. So I just decided that I was gonna listen to it until I felt like taking notes. And basically, like now, I'm way more familiar with the content. But basically, Stephen Kotler talks about the mechanics of flow, talks about this idea about happiness, basically that there are 3 tiers of happiness available to all human beings. There is the baseline level of happiness, which can be increased by around 10%, through mindfulness practice and like breathing exercises and stuff. But that's the baseline. And basically, to jump to the next tier, you need to use flow. And basically, the next tier is enjoyment. And this is when your goals are aligned with the activity that brings you flow. And the last one is purpose. And this is basically the pinnacle of happiness. Basically, the pinnacle of happiness that any human can reach. And basically, this is it's a high flow lifestyle where the thing that gets you into flow aligns you with your purpose. And yeah, basically, there's this idea that flow is basically like it underpins well-being, overall life satisfaction, meaning, and purpose. And so it's actually crucial to live in a happy and fulfilled life. And it's also basically somewhat of a requirement for success, quote unquote. But yeah, basically it talks about the idea that like all of the peak performers that you see are addicted to flow because flow is addicting. If you talk about it from a neurobiology perspective, basically flow, the state of flow causes 5 very, very addictive neurochemicals to be released, 3 of which are dopamine, serotonin, and neuroepinephrine. I'm sorry, guys, I'm not like someone who studies neurobiology or whatever. I just picked up these words from from this podcast. Obviously, I knew about dopamine and serotonin. So serotonin is the hormone of love and like belonging. There's like oxytocin is also a hormone of love, but I think they're different. Probably. I'm not very knowledgeable to be honest, but I just find this topic super interesting. But anyway, flow is something that's very addictive, and it has definitely been my experience that whenever I feel unhappy, it's because I'm not able to practice my primary flow activity, which I think is around maths. Like whenever I'm doing maths, whenever I'm doing just like learning about mathematics, learning proofs and stuff like this, I'm just so happy. As you can probably remember from when I was preparing for my applied science interviews. And yeah, I think that's probably my primary flow activity. And yeah, it's like I related so much with this thing that Mo Gawdat was talking about that basically he was feeling at some point he was feeling burnt out because for like 8 months he did not get the time to sit down and write, and writing for him is his primary flow activity. And so he felt bad, and because he felt bad that he was not writing, basically he couldn't get anything else done. And this is 100% a feeling that I've had, like especially the 2 years before I did my applied science interviews. That's exactly what I was feeling. I was so burnt out from not having done any maths, or like I was just so feeling so bad about not doing that. And missing mathematics and missing machine learning to some extent, because machine learning inherently is just mathematics. That's why I'm just saying to some extent. But basically, I was just missing it so much that I couldn't do anything else. And when Mo Gawdat talked about this, I just thought that's exactly what I was feeling during that period of my life. And yeah, hopefully with this team change, that will no longer be true. But I really don't know. I'll tell you a bit more tomorrow or after tomorrow when I talk to my new manager. But yeah, And yeah, there are so many things. Like I took so many notes. It's genuinely very insights. Like it's very dense in insights, this episode. And if you've never encountered the work of Stephen Kotler before, like many, I mean, I've heard of his work, but I had not really interacted with it in depth until now. And yeah, I just had to take so many notes on flow, relationships, happiness, burnout. So I definitely think that whoever is listening, I think you should probably go give a listen to this podcast episode that includes you, future Rita, who's editing this video. I think you probably will appreciate a refresher on these ideas. But basically, this episode is the somewhat of the perfect representation of this thing that I'm trying to do, which is re-listening to podcast episodes that really intrigue me and that bring me new information. Like this whole podcast episode was almost all entirely new information for me, so that's why I listened to it 5 times this week. Partially, I mean that's partially the reason. Not I listened to it partially because I listened to it fully. But yeah, what was I saying? I was just talking about the reason that I listened to this podcast episode 5 times this week and how you should listen to this episode, I guess. But yeah, like basically this idea of re-listening to things and rereading books that I find are interest that really spark my curiosity or like really give me new information is something that I'm trying to apply right now, and it feels really good because basically I get a deeper grasp of whichever concepts are being discussed. And I'm able to basically build a better mental model using this information that I gained from these mediums. And so maybe this time I took it to the extreme, like 5 times the same episode, but I think it was definitely a good one. I learned a lot from it. So that's why I listened to it 5 times, is because I really didn't want to miss any information. I didn't want to sleep, like any information to slip by without me maybe taking notes of it. And yeah, so yeah, today, thank God, I finished it and I finished taking the notes that I wanted to take. And I started listening to another episode also on the Mo Gawdat podcast, which was the next one. I think it was 286, the number. And it was with Mo's co-author, Alice Law, on their upcoming book called Unstressable. And yeah, I think this idea of stress is also really like I'm genuinely looking forward to this book because I've had a really weird relationship with stress throughout my life, and I have learned to navigate it a bit better. But it was mostly based on intuition, like on trial and error, and I would love to have some sort of theory behind this, like stress management, etc. So I'm looking forward to when this book comes out. I think it's gonna come out in 2 to 3 months. So I'll definitely read it then. That's all that I wanted to talk about really for today. Thanks a lot for tuning in. You can click here to watch my previous video on this channel, also the one right before this one, or you can click here to watch my latest video on the channel overall. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, night, whichever time of day it is where you are right now. Bye for now, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye!